Although the concept of generosity is so powerful in making us happier and healthier, this has not sunk in into our collective consciousness yet. So there was a research conducted in 2008 by Dan Acknen and Norden where they proved this point. They asked a number of participants to choose and predict which would make them happier. One, spending money on themselves, and two, spending money on others. They found that a significant majority of the participants chose that spending money on themselves would make them happier. This led the researchers to conclude that people are not inherently aware of the benefits of being generous. And although this particular study deals with generosity vis a vis money, our video will be dealing with generosity as a whole. Let's get started. If you recognize my thumbnail, you will know what I consider to be the most audacious example of generosity in our timeline. It was the iconic moment in 2004 when Oprah Winfrey gave away 297 Pontiac G6s to every single member of her audience. If you haven't seen this 4-minute clip, you can check it out. It's the first link in my description and you won't regret it. Upon announcement, a carnival like atmosphere descended on her studio and the audience went wild. But what is interesting to note is that Oprah herself was the most ebullient of the lot and she yelled, "You get a car, you get a car, you get a car" 11 times at the top of her lungs. When asked about this episode, Oprah said that it was her all time favorite, happiest moment ever. So, why did Oprah, who had spent a ton of money, energy, and resources, report such feelings of delight? This is because generosity is known to have a plethora of benefits for your mind, body, and mood. And that's what we're discovering today. What is generosity exactly? Where did it come from? What does our biology say about generosity? What are the benefits of generosity? And can I be more generous? So, for the purposes of this paper, I've primarily relied upon the white paper written by Summer Allen of the University of Berkeley, where she's done a meta analysis of the research conducted on generosity. So, what does generosity mean? Generosity is defined as the virtue of giving good things to others freely and abundantly. So, what are these good things? So, the good things can be tangible things like money, possessions, and can also be intangible things like time, emotional support, attention, etc. The research community, however, prefers to use the words altruism and pro social behavior instead of the word generosity. And altruism essentially means a motivational state with the ultimate goal of increasing another's welfare. And pro social behavior means a broad category of acts which are determined by a large segment of society as being generally beneficial to other people. So, before we delve into the biology of humans to determine if humans are naturally generous or naturally selfish, let's see if there are examples of generosity in nature. There are many examples of generosity in nature, and there are several species which display an astonishing level of cooperation, as we can see in army ants, bees, fish, etc. But the majority of the research in generosity has been done on non human primates, and I'll give you a wonderful example of generosity in the common marmoset monkeys. So, the common marmoset monkeys are a species with relatively poor cognitive abilities, and research has found that these monkeys will spontaneously give food to unrelated monkeys even if those monkeys don't reciprocate, indicating that advanced cognitive ability is not required for animals to show consideration for a peer's welfare, which also means that you don't need to be a genius to be giving. And if a common marmoset monkey can do it, so what does our biological hardware say about generosity? Our biological hardware, and in particular our brain circuits and hormones, are always ready to help us help others, and they make us feel good when we do so. In other words, our bodies are prepared for us to be generous and also encourage it. There are several studies on this subject, and I'll tell you about an interesting one that revolves around the reward processing centers in our brains. And essentially, a study was conducted in 2006 on the mesolimbic area of our brain, which is the reward processing center, which is activated by stimuli like sex, food, drugs, and receiving money. Research found that this area was also activated when we made charitable donations. Another study, piggybacking on this one, went ahead to say that the reward processing center of the brain was activated not only when we made charitable donations voluntarily, but also when we were forced to make charitable donations, although the activity in this area was greater when the action was voluntary. So, does this mean that all people are equally generous? And we can just take a quick look at society to know that that's not true. And you can also take a look at the research on brain imaging. Research on brain imaging has shown a correlation between activity in certain parts of the brain and a propensity to altruism. So essentially, how generous a person is dependent on various individual factors as well as societal factors. But why has our biological hardware developed to promote generosity? And there are various theories for why evolution has promoted generosity in humans and in other species. And to me, the most interesting theory is called gene culture coevolution, which is accredited for various human behaviors. And in our context, it essentially means that cultures which promoted pro social behavior survived, and the ones that didn't, which is why all of us survivors have an inbuilt chip of generosity already. Additionally, man is a social animal, and the idea of interdependence also motivates generosity. So, at an individual level, I'm being generous to you because you have already been generous to me or will be generous to me. At a family level, I'm being generous to you because you're part of my family and I want my family to survive. At a group level, it could be because although you're not a part of my family, I still want my group to survive. And at a society level, it is in your interest that you build a cooperative social system and therefore are willing to be generous towards the society. Now we come to the crux of the issue. What is the value of generosity? Why should I be generous? Am I gaining something? And the answer is yes. And I'll quickly take you through 5 studies which show you how generosity can help you be physiologically healthier. It can reduce your mortality risk. It can improve your life satisfaction, improve positive emotions, and overall make you feel happier. Let's get into it. The first research paper I'm going to tell you about was published in 2005 by Brown, Magai, and Considine, where they basically had 1,118 ethnically diverse participants from Brooklyn, New York. And these participants engaged in providing social support, whether that was time, effort, or goods, and they were tested on their overall health after the experiment. And they found that on markers such as blood pressure, sleep, hearing, their health improved overall. And furthermore, they found that this improvement in health was regardless of whether these participants received any social support in return. The next piece of research is on mortality, and a study analyzed a representative sample of 1,211 Americans over the age of 65, and they found that if these adults volunteered for less than 40 hours at only one organization, then they were found to have a reduced mortality risk or a longer life. The next piece of research is on life satisfaction, and a study was published in 2013 which had 585 participants who were living in a retirement community in Florida, and they reported that if they had volunteered frequently and had informally also helped people, then they reported a greater life satisfaction in a later wave of the study. They also found that an altruistic attitude helped to have positive emotions later on, and more frequent volunteering was directly correlated with fewer depressive symptoms. The next study is on positive emotions and was published in 2016, and they basically had participants divided into 2 groups. one set of people had to perform acts of kindness towards others or to the world for a period of 6 weeks, and the other group had to have acts of kindness towards themselves. The first group reported greater positive emotions and fewer negative emotions, whereas the second group didn't notice any difference at all. The last research is actually the first piece of research that I started with, and it was published in 2008 by Dan Akinen and Norton, where they basically divided participants into two groups. The first group had to spend money on others, and the second group had to spend money on themselves. And whether the amount was $5 or $20, the first group reported feeling greater happiness than the second group. So, this kind of shows us that if we alter our spending patterns just a little bit, an amount as small as $5 can potentially make us happier. So, now that we know all the benefits of generosity, how can I build a greater level of generosity in my life? So, I will tell you two easy ways to do that. And the first way is a day recap. Just do a recap of your day, and for about 30 seconds, notice the ways in which people were generous to you or how you were generous to others. And once we build an awareness of the generosity that already exists, then we can actively choose one way or the other. And the second way is you can follow my meditation right here to nurture the seeds of generosity that are already within us. And the last and final way you can be generous is by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. Thanks.